everyone, it's Eddie here from the Entrepreneur Drummer, and today I want to give you a quick tutorial on how to use the Slate Trigger 2 drum trigger. Even though this channel is mainly focused on the business side of being a session drummer, I have had quite a high demand of maintaining these tutorials and videos about mixing and editing and recording. So today I'm just going to give you a quick tutorial on how to use the Slate Trigger 2 and some of the benefits of using a drum trigger. A drum trigger essentially detects a piece of audio, which in this case will be your kicks, snare or toms. It will then automatically replace this hit with a sample drum of your choice, and this is a really good way of replacing bad tones or reinforcing your current tones to make them sound bigger or more professional. There is usually quite a stigma around this with drummers and engineers because drummers obviously want to use their natural drum sounds. They pay a lot of money for drums, they spend a lot of time tuning it, and a lot of thought goes into getting their own personal drum sound. So often replacing them with samples is, a little bit of an insult to them, which is very understandable. However, in the recording world, triggers are a very useful tool for making things sound even better than they originally were. Audio engineers are often split into two different categories where they either love using one or they're completely against it and are all about the natural tones. As an audio engineer myself, I'm quite open to using a trigger, and I do use it on some clients' recordings depending on what they want and whether the recordings are good enough to keep. Like I mentioned earlier, there are great benefits with this for either reinforcing your current tones to make things sound massive, or if you've just recorded a bad quality drum that's maybe out of tune or doesn't sound great or doesn't suit the recording, then it's very easy to sample replace it with a trigger and still make it sound natural. So now I just want to show you how to use the Slate Trigger 2, whether you've already bought it and you're looking for a tutorial on how to use it, or whether you're interested in getting one in the future. Then this tutorial is just going to show you how easy it is to use and to implement one. So this is the Slate Trigger 2 here. There's a lot of functionality in here, so I just want to sum up the main sections of it and how you would go about using it. Over here on the left hand side, you've got your input section, which lets you determine the volume of the input of the main audio before it gets triggered. So say if it's too quiet and the trigger's struggling to pick it up, then you can boost a bit of audio there. Likewise, you can do the same on the output section with the volume knob here. However, I do like to use just the normal faders for this and add a bit of compression to make it louder. So I don't often use these volume knobs. However, you've got a useful function here called the mix, which lets you determine the ratio between the output of the trigger, the sampled audio, and if you still want to mix some of the original audio in with that to make it sound a bit more natural, then you can do. So 100% will be entirely the sample, 0% will be entirely the original audio, and obviously 50% will be a perfect mix of the two. Here you've got some low cut and high cut knobs, which essentially don't trigger anything below that certain frequency that is set there. You've got a handy tool here called suppress, which essentially tries to get rid of any microphone bleed. So say if a snare is bleeding in a tom mic, then it will try cut out the snare bleed in that tom mic, so it's only picking up the tom hits and not the snare hits as well. If you go onto this side here, you've got sensitivity, which basically at 50 here, the default setting, it'll just pick up the normal kick, snare and toms. If you want to pick up ghost notes or things like that, those little hits in there, then you can turn that up to about 90 or 95, and that's going to help you trigger them ghost notes as well, without interfering with other bits that don't need to be triggered. You've got this retrigger setting here, which will essentially, that time in there, it won't trigger anything 16 milliseconds after an original hit. So say if the trigger keeps picking up another hit after a main hit that isn't actually a hit, it's just a part of the waveform, then you can add that retrigger to basically cancel the trigger picking anything up 20 milliseconds after a hit. So sometimes you get these little flammy sort of effects where it sort of detects a double hit. So this setting here will be useful for getting rid of that. Here you've got the detail, which lets you set a threshold of when the trigger starts coming in. So depending on how loud the audio is coming in, it gives you a really nice visual indication of if it's picking up that hit or not. So I'm going to show you this in effect very shortly. We're currently on view curves here. By default it's on mixer setting, Here you can mute and solo any of the three kick mics or whatever drum you've got in here. Some of the mics are just like added air and room mics, so you can mute them if you like. Likewise, you can just solo the main mic. You've got tune knobs here, so if you are looking to reinforce the original audio and not replace it, then you can match the tune of the sample with your original recording. I've also got some pan knobs up here, but I don't really use them. I like to do all my panning in my DAW down here. If we go onto view curves, you've got your attack, sustain and release settings for the sample if you do want to change them. And also down here you can choose the dynamics, so essentially you can make the samples sound more robotic or more human like the original recording. So with a dynamic all the way up to 100, you'd keep the soft sounds soft, and therefore the dynamic range would be larger. If you want to dial down and make everything sound a similar velocity, then you'd place the dynamics down to 0 or down towards 0. With velocity as well, you dial that all the way down if you want a more human feel that's in the original recording, and if you want to maintain that original feel. If you turn the velocity all the way up to 100, then that's going to give you a really robotic MIDI sort of sound where every hit's the same. So ideally you want somewhere roughly around 30-40 to get a nice blend, in my opinion. So this kit was recorded admittedly by me a long time ago, and it's not really captured very well, and the kit itself is tuned very poorly. It doesn't sound great. So we're going to sample replace all this kit. So we're going to start off with a kick here. So here's the kick sound before. So it's really flammy, really boingy. It's not got much of a thud to it. So we're definitely going to want to replace that entirely. So we're going to enable this trigger on this kick track down here. We're going to browser, and we're going to go onto presets, platinum kits, and let's choose what we got here. We've got all these different preset kits. Go into radio hit kit, and we'll select kick. You can see the 3 different channels, the 3 different mics for the kick appearing down here. So let's try play that now and see if it picks it up. So you see that's already replaced it. If you look at the track, there's not a lot of bleed in there, so it's very easy for the trigger to detect the kick and the kick only. So next we're going to have a look at our snare tone and see if this needs replacing or reinforcing. See, it's not too much of a bad snare tone that, so we could maybe get away with just reinforcing it to thicken it up a little bit. So if we go into the browser setting here, we go onto deluxe, go into presets. Let's try something a bit different. Let's try thick rock kit, shall we? Right, we'll scroll down, click snare, and the snare mics appear there. So let's just give it a listen and see how the trigger responds to that without any alterations. So you can see there, without any adjustment again, because the microphone bleed is quite short, that we're not having to alter many things. So I'm just going to play this round for you again and have a mess around with this detail knob here, and you can see how that works in real time. So you could see then with the detail all the way up, it wasn't picking up all the snare hits there. So we brought the detail in a little bit more, and that captured all of the hits. If you brought that in a bit too close, it would pick up too much detail and probably play snare hits when there's none there. So if we go to this cluttered section here where we've got some toms, we're going to turn this detail right down, and you'll see that it'll pick up a lot more than just the snare. So you can see how much of a mess that is there. So that's why we have the detail quite high. And then if we do want to dial into some ghost notes, then we'll turn that sensitivity up rather than turning the detail up. So now let's try and mix the original snare and the triggered snare together and try and get a nice mix of tones there. So you can see there, that's quite a nice mix. If you go down to 0%, you'll just be able to hear the original audio. 100% is purely just the sample. So if you go somewhere in between, it'll be a nice blend of them both. So now let's work on our floor tom mic. So this is terribly out of tune. So let's have a listen to this. Yeah, that's enough of that. That sounds horrible. Yeah, shut up. That sounds horrible, that, and we definitely want to get rid of that entirely. So let's open up the trigger now. So let's open up a browser here, into presets. We'll get both the toms from the same kit just to add a bit of consistency with the sound. Let's go down here. What have we got? So many options, eh? We'll go into Radio Rocker kit. Song 4. There we go. Right, go back onto the trigger here. So just gonna dial in these settings now to pick up these toms, nothing more and nothing less. So once again, that was pretty easy. There's not a lot of microphone bleed there, and there's not a lot in the rest of the track really. So we'll keep that at that for now. Let's just show you how to actually make it a bit more human. So if we go into view curves, so with the dynamic knob all the way up to 100 on all of these, that's going to ensure that the soft sounds stay soft and the dynamic range will be as big as it can be. So if we mess around with this velocity now, you're going to be able to hear these hits sound more and more natural as they were originally recorded. So you can hear with that velocity all the way down that that's playing the sample as naturally as it was recorded, and if anything it doesn't sound too great. But if we go all the way up, then it equally doesn't sound great because it sounds way too robotic and like MIDI. So if we find a nice sweet spot there, we're going to be able to give it a bit of a human feel while tightening up the dynamics as well. So there we go, we've got a nice amount of human feel in there now while tightening up the dynamics, so that's good to go. If we go onto the Rectum now, place the trigger in there and we'll just have a quick listen before. So you can hear there's quite a lot more microphone bleed in that than in the other channels that we've looked at so far. So we'll open up our trigger and we'll see what it does straight off the bat. We'll quickly load in a sample. Radio Rocket Kit, go for Tom 2. So let's play this now and see what the trigger does on default. So you can see there it's not quite picking up the hits. Oh, just picked 2 up there. So this detail definitely needs dialing in a little bit more. So you can see there it's picking up them 3 hits on every turn around, so that is exactly how we want it. So just to finish off, I want to show you the difference this makes to the overall sound by bypassing the triggers and then enabling them again, so you can see the difference it really makes to the kit sound. So this has been my tutorial on the Slate Trigger 2. I hope it's been helpful for you, and if you have any questions, feel free to post in the comments below. If you're watching this and you're a session drummer looking to get more clients, if you're looking to build a website and to get more followers, to get more potential clients in your space, and then you want to convert them into your clients in the future, then I highly recommend downloading our free guide, which is linked directly below this video. This will give you all the steps, which are super simple, you need to take in order to get more clients and to look more professional online. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial today. Once again, I hope it's been helpful and I hopefully will see you very soon.